how did the idea for Pink Laddu come about? And why Pink Laddu?
So generally within the South Asian community, there are quite a few traditions to celebrate the birth of a boy, but there's no tradition, no long-standing tradition to celebrate the birth of a girl. On the face of it, this might seem like it's no big deal, but actually it's sexist customs like these that underpin patriarchy and perpetuate messages that women are inferior to men. Now, in my own experience, my sister is 10 years younger than me. And when she was born, the community reacted very badly to her birth because she was a girl. And, there was like a lot of crying. It was bizarre in hindsight, but they reacted very badly. Fast forward 2 years, and then my brother is born, and obviously the reaction was very different. And it was while we were packing the boxes of sweets that we were going to go and give out as a birth announcement for him that I said to my mum, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if there was a tradition to mark the birth of a girl? Now, the sweet that's given out in South Asian culture to celebrate anything, particularly a boy's birth, is called a laddu. It's a round, yellow, sugary sweet. And you would never see this in any other instance than something that is like a pure celebration. So I said that to my mum when I was about 12, and I never really thought about it again. How can you expect a South Asian woman to campaign for herself at work, to ask for promotion or a pay rise or leave an abusive marriage if she's being told from birth that she's worth less than a boy? And that's exactly what's happening every time a South Asian boy's birth is celebrated jubilantly, but a South Asian girl's birth is ignored. And so that's kind of how the campaign was born. I was like, I think it's time. And I think it's well and lovely to focus on things like, ending dowry and educating girls, but you kind of have to start right from the beginning. And the very first sexist custom, the very first sexist thing a South Asian girl will experience is that girls' births aren't celebrated as excitedly as boys' births. So that's what the Pink Laddu Project is trying to do. It's trying to encourage South Asian families to celebrate their girls' births, to give out a pink laddu. So the sweet is called a laddu, to give out a pink laddu to everyone in their network as a birth announcement for their child. And, we hope that every family that receives a box of pink laddu will at least think about the concept of gender equality. I mean, how could you not when you're, presented with something like a pink laddu? And also to subsequently critically engage with other sexist customs and traditions as well.
So good. So what has the journey been like since you started Pink Laddu, and what kind of impact it's also had so far?
So the journey has been really interesting because I launched in 2015 and the social media landscape has changed so much in that time, right?
Yeah.
So in 2015, Facebook was the big player. Twitter's kind of always been consistent, but Instagram has kind of had a rise over the years. And so when I initially launched the campaign, there was no other South Asian feminist movement that existed, particularly within the diaspora. And it took off like wildfire. Our posts were routinely going viral on Facebook. The following exploded overnight. Pink Laddu became available in shops, in Indian sweet shops around the world fairly quickly based on demand. And this was also my thesis. My thesis was, I feel like people are ready to celebrate their girls, but they just need to be given something concrete and something just definable as a way of doing it. Like, I feel like families are like giving out cupcakes or cookies or random things, but I think they need some more cohesion in their efforts. It's also easier to do something when you feel like there's a volume of people behind you, right? So we were creating the illusion of mass on Pink Laddu by kind of making it look like people were really doing this. So anytime anyone sent me a picture of celebrating their girl with Pink Laddu, I was just constantly sharing it. And it took off like wildfire, which I think kind of proved the thesis that people were ready to do this. They just needed the push, and they just needed to know that there was the support of the community behind them. Whereas I think previously they might have felt like, the lone person marching, out of the dark on their own. Whereas now you kind of feel like there's this whole online community doing it with you. So that was really exciting. It grew really fast. We got so much media coverage, across the UK, Canada, US, Australia. We were in all the major press, major mainstream press. Sweet shops across those countries are now selling these sweets. Thousands of girls' births have been celebrated with Pink Laddu. And I don't sell or make Pink Laddu, right? Part of the thesis was, in order for this to catch on, Pink Ladoo, it needs to be something that's easy to do. So that's one of the main things as a campaign, right? Your call to action has to be easy to replicate.
Yes.
So if
Okay.
I was the only person making or selling these things, I become the bottleneck. It makes it difficult. So, we kind of just ensured that sweet shops felt comfortable just going out and making it no matter what, without my consent and without needing to pay me or anything like that. And it kind of happened that way. And so it snowballed. But the campaign today is very different to what it was when it started in many respects, because social media has now exploded. There are a lot more South Asian feminist spaces online. There aren't as many campaigns, but there are spaces. So I'm competing for audience in a way that I wasn't before.
Right.
But one thing I've always said is that, I will know it's a success when people are doing it without knowing about me or the campaign. And I'm hearing stories like that where people will go into a sweet shop and they have a tray of Pink Ladoo on display. And someone will say, "Oh, do you follow the Pink Ladoo campaign?" And they're like, "We don't know what you're talking about. Like, we have them here because people request them." Do you know what I mean? And to me,
Yeah.
that's the true indicator of success, because it's growing. Like, the idea was that this would become a trend and a tradition in and of its own right that exists outside of me. And it feels like that's happening. So the journey's been quite interesting. I always used to say that I don't think the campaign has more than 5 years. Like, people kind of get bored hearing the same thing over and over again. But we're in year 7,
Mm-hmm.
and continues to prove me wrong. There's like a new generation of women and mothers who are following, who are celebrating their girls. And I get messages now from people who sent me pictures 5 years ago when they were celebrating their first daughter with Pink Ladoo. And now they're sending me pictures of like their second or their third girl being celebrated in the same way. So it's
Oh,
interesting.
that's so beautiful. One of the things I really respect about the whole campaign and how you've run it is you not making it about you. It's avoiding that hoarding mentality and actually making it about your community and your people and it's spreading. And I love that your measure of success is actually, I will know it has succeeded when it has nothing to do with me. Like, I think that is so powerful and such a noble thing to do.
I think that's very kind, and you're being very generous. And that's not always easy, like I do, because social media is a place where you're encouraged, the person is encouraged to be the brand. So I
Yeah.
do find it really difficult, like sometimes when there are campaigns, but like the person behind it is becoming the brand. And it's hard not to slip into that, like, why wasn't I
Yeah.
invited to that panel, or why wasn't I recognized for that thing? And then I use those early metrics of success to kind of like recalibrate myself and bring myself back and be like, no, I always said it wasn't about that. So the pull is there, the tug of war is there. But I think when you go back to what you were like before any of this existed, it's kind of a way of getting back to your first principles and reminding yourself about what matters.
Ugh, that's so good. And I really appreciate that you've mentioned that the temptation almost and the tug is always there to kind of almost make it about your want to have more of a piece of the pie. So I appreciate you saying that. When you first started Pink Ladoo, you mentioned that you had a thesis, which was you really thought and believed that people were ready to celebrate their girl's birth, but you just weren't sure until you tested it out. What gave you the courage to start? Because you are in a sense disrupting a culture and a way of living that has been upheld by a community for so long.
So I think what gave me the courage was that my call to action is like so benign. Like, what I'm not saying you have to stop doing something. I'm just saying you have to do it for girls too. And like, it's really hard to fight with someone who's saying, "Hey, can you just like really celebrate your daughter's birth with a box of candy like you do for a boy?" So I think that kind of gave me the confidence, is that I kind of knew
Wow.
intuitively it's really hard to fight with this. Some call to actions that are easier to fight with, I think, are the ones where, people are doing something a certain way and they have to either stop doing that or change that. I think an easier call to action is when you're just adding, you're just getting people to do something, right? They're actively involved in the creation of a new tradition rather than being actively involved in dismantling an old one. So I think
Wow.
that's kind of what gave me the confidence. I was like, how could you even fight with this? Like, like I'm literally saying, like, I don't want money for the sweet. Go anywhere you can find it to get it. And if you can't find a pink laddu, just give out a normal laddu, but just celebrate your girl. So I think knowing that it was a bit harmless and cute and quite feel good made me think that actually I don't think people will resist this.